Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all for being here so early in the morning, both listeners and panelists. Appreciate having you up here. At the beginning, I'll start with some questions that will sort of have each of you answer the same question, and then I'll move on to some individual questions for each of you. The very first is the typical standard, what is your name, what are you working on in your company, and why is that important to you? I'll start with you, Pascal.
So my name is Pascal Gauthier. I'm CEO at Ledger. At Ledger, we care about security and ease of use for crypto assets. We do this for consumers, and we do this for enterprise. If you cannot secure your assets, you cannot use them. And so blockchain technologies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of this doesn't exist. I always like to know who is in the room. So if I may ask, like, who owns a Ledger wallet? OK, thank you. For those who didn't raise your hand, it's ledger.com. It works on mobile. We ship everywhere in the world. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. Very good to be here. My name is James Tromans. I lead our overall Web3 efforts at Google Cloud, obviously part of Google. We are obviously an infrastructure provider, and we want to be one of the best places for Web3 developers to build. We've been at this for a while, which not everyone knows, but in particular over the last couple of years, which I'm sure you'll hear more about later on in this talk.
Hi, I'm Joseph Lubin. I work at a company called Consensys Software. Consensys builds tools and services for developers to build applications in the metropolitan Ethereum ecosystem. We offer MetaMask, security audit tools. We offer Infura. We recently launched a layer 2 CK EVM called Linea. And our focus is on maximal decentralization. We build tools that enable permissionless innovation, especially right now in the MetaMask space. MetaMask just launched a platform called Snaps, enabling anybody to build functionality and add functionality permissionlessly into MetaMask. And we're doing the same thing at the infrastructure layer soon with decentralized infrastructure network.
Hi, Matthew Roszak, and I'll just say that Singapore is very special to me because this is where I learned about Bitcoin about 12 years ago. And by 2013, I started investing in the space through my firm Tally Capital, and have been also advocating for crypto through the Chamber of Digital Commerce. So if you care about crypto, you have to care about the regulatory constructs. And my day job is building Bloq, and Bloq builds applications and infrastructure in Web3. My co-founder is Jeff Garzik, who was one of the original core developers of Bitcoin, and we build wallets, nodes, DeFi, a variety of different applications and infrastructure.
Thank you, thank you. I'd actually like to start at the end rather than the beginning of our conversation, and by that, I'd like to hear each of your thoughts on what mass adoption looks like for cryptocurrency. What do you think blockchains could look like if they were massively adopted in this world? What systems would they be in? What systems would they not be in? Perhaps we start with you, Matthew, this time.
That's a biggie, and I guess I'll start by, we are living in a generation where we have some amazing, what I'll call human coordination technology. I can't find a better word for it, but if you think about like how we're able to disseminate information and news and data and money, our parents or grandparents never had these opportunities. It's almost like Gutenberg press level coordination technologies where humans could now move money, data, and information like never before. And it's really important for us to be able to have these conditions to share these things and build these cooperatives and have these elements. And I think if you think about these basic elements of messaging and movement of money and everything else, for those systems to be resilient, they have to be born and built on blockchain systems over the long period of time. And so I think the future of a lot of these important human coordination technologies are going to be burnished and built on top of Web3. So this is a really important scaffold and infrastructure. And then, on the periphery, we're all thinking about, how does AI play into this? And, a lot of those kind of coordination technologies, these digital agents will also help us as the world gets more complicated and the rest of it. So I think the scaffolding of Web3 is going to be super important for literally every kind of system going forward.
Yeah, so for millennia, we've had trust and authority instilled in all of our systems, top down, from ultimate authorities down through intermediaries and into different databases that were essentially controlled by trusted third parties, and sometimes didn't make sense to trust those third parties. There's a new invention, decentralized protocols, started with Bitcoin essentially in our context. And that represents our ability to build infrastructure that is bottom-up trust foundation for the planet, a shared open database in which we can participate, in which we can directly inspect, and it's essentially an of, by, and for the people system. So based on the new trust foundation, we can instill trust, verifiability, decentralized assets, decentralized property rights into everything we build. It's important to build a maximally decentralized trust infrastructure, but then we can build upon that and bring decentralization and trust to different layers of a heterogeneous modular set of systems that are well connected. So the future has appropriate decentralization built into lots of different systems. We'll have heterogeneous systems because we have heterogeneous applications. And so it's kind of an exciting time to be alive because we're flipping the trust vector that we've been laboring under from bottom down to top down to bottom up, and it's going to change everything.
So I think mass adoption will look different to where we are now for sure. I think when we stop talking about Web 2 and Web 3 and we just talk about the web and technology again, and I think that the underlying technical implementation fades into the background, but still to support some of the things that Joe was just talking about. I think that the overall sort of divide is perhaps getting in the way of that mass adoption, and I think technology is there to serve consumers, it's to serve business outcomes, and actually the implementation details shouldn't necessarily be what the end user is exposed to day to day. I genuinely believe that not everyone wants to be the owners of their own private keys, but I think people should be able to be if they want to be and have that option. And so there's going to be a continuum from some centralization through to completely decentralized. And I actually think we don't really have a good cohesive shared agreement amongst everybody of what fully decentralized means. Is that fully decentralized software teams that are building the technology? Is it networks? Is it the application layer? Is it all the way up to the top and all the way down to the bottom? There's always single points of or bottlenecks in any system, and when you optimize them, you move it forward. And the end user doesn't need to know about this. I think the end user needs to be able to get on with their day and have a great user experience. And so, from a Google Cloud perspective, we want to help our customers build those capabilities. And I think when we're at a point, to circle back to how I started, where we don't talk about Web 2 and Web 3 as separate, and it's just back to technology again and just back to the web, I think we'll be at a point of mass adoption.
Yeah, I will second James on what he just said. I think mass adoption is usually when users or enterprise or whatever, you use something without really knowing that you're using the technology, and it's more of a product and feature and what problem it solves for you every day. That makes you use the tech, and crypto is a tech-led world today, but product is very different. And you have a good example of using the web on mobile. You know, it was very, very difficult, and suddenly came the iPhone. And the way that the iPhone was designed was from a pure product and user experience point of view. And suddenly it became very easy to use internet on mobile. I mean, for those that are young enough to have, you know, sort of phones in the years of 2000, etc., and I've seen this revolution, you can see how product sort of impacts usage and how product leads to mass adoption. And as far as Ledger is concerned, and you know, you will see that I'm super biased in what I'm going to say, but nothing will work if you don't bring security and ease of use and a combination of the two. And every web revolution is always hardware-led. We are coming now in 2023, Web 2, there is fantasy that Web 2 is, you know, software is eating the world or something like that. But it only eats the world because it's on hardware. Actually, if you think about the beginning of the internet, there's a bunch of hardware that had to be deployed, you know, fucking cables and to actually make it work. And if you don't have a PC, well, you cannot connect to the internet. And if you don't have an iPhone, you cannot connect to mobile internet in a nice way. And when it comes to crypto, secure hardware is going to be an obligation. And so you will ask, well, is it in the form of what it is today, where you always need to have like a sort of a dongle with your phone, etc.? Maybe not, but maybe, you know. Nobody likes gravity, and everybody wants to fly, but, you know, gravity is a bitch. And if you jump from the roof of a big building, you die. And so losing your private keys is sort of everything. There are many software initiatives to actually try to make this go away, but it's always sort of blended with secure hardware. So is it going to be Ledger? Maybe, and we're going to try hard. Will sort of Apple, Samsung, etc. go into making their products much more secure than what they are today? I think it's inevitable, because whether it's Web3, Web 2, or whatever the web, you can actually see when you use products today that security is becoming sort of tighter every day. You cannot connect to an exchange without having a 2FA, which is something of now. You know, login password was enough a few years ago. Now it's not enough anymore. And actually, you can see that it's becoming, you know, ever more complex to connect to your web experience when and where there is value. So, you know, I think for mass adoption, and the time of hardware is actually quite long. You know, even for big companies to go from sort of where they are today, for Apple to come with the first really secure phone, you know, it's going to take a few years. So I think mass adoption will come, but it will need like a whole new generation of hardware that make it extremely secure and very easy to use, and a bunch of applications that run on top of that to bring real usability to user and create a real experience.
Thank you. By the way, please feel free to cross-pollinate. If any of you want to add on to something someone else says or contradict, jump in. My next question is around trade-offs. So each of you build infrastructure in different ways. The more successful you are, the more people use your infrastructure. How do each of you think of the trade-offs between, on one side, decentralization, everyone hosting their own nodes, everyone chewing glass to figure out everything they have to do, and then on the other side, centralization, the convenience of the tooling that allows them to spin up the things they need to develop in the Web3 space? To change up the ordering, perhaps we start with James and then Joe.
Sure, yeah. So, you know, obviously I very much believe in that choice of individual users being able to run their own nodes on their phone, if there's a blockchain that's light enough for that to happen, under their desk at home. But I also think that choice is important, and if people want convenience, they should have that too. And so obviously at Google Cloud, we're building that convenience, right? We have Blockchain Node Engine, which is a Google-engineered first-party product that enables folks to click to deploy, or API, or CLI, an Ethereum node, full node, or archival node in global regions across the world. And we're bringing to market Solana and Polygon very, very soon as well. And that's really convenient for certain people. And it's very convenient for the enterprise as well, right? Folks who perhaps want to participate, but not as a core individual at home, but from a business standpoint, they want a contract, they want a vendor, they want someone who they can have SLOs and SLAs with. And if we want to have mass adoption, this is critical. We need this level of infrastructure as well. And I think from a Google Cloud perspective, we have our own undersea cables, right? You mentioned hardware. When you add more network connectivity to a network, you're not subtracting anything. You're adding more routes to get from A to B. And so by leveraging Google Cloud's networks and all the other networks, we're able to actually add to more decentralization in a way. So I do feel very strongly that we have an important role to play in helping bridge that gap from the level of adoption that we have today through to wider adoption. But I also think that, at the end of the day, there's more than one role to play. So we're an infrastructure company, but if we can help build certain software capabilities that will bring more folks into the mix, that's good too. And generally, if you think about consumer adoption, we need more developer adoption. Google Cloud has millions of active developers on the platform. And not all those developers know a lot about Web3 today, right? Some of those developers are still building in traditional technologies. So we're also building capabilities that help take on-chain data off-chain and make it easily searchable and indexable for anyone who knows SQL. That's been something we've been doing through the community for 5 years already. And so all of these things are important to that adoption, and I don't think that they subtract from the decentralization argument. I think protocol builders and foundations, if they don't want enterprises like Google Cloud to build products to make it easier to run their software, then they need to think a lot about egress, right? Can you run certain nodes that are really, really chatty on your home computer? Maybe not, right? Is it too expensive? There are certain blockchains that take months to sync, right? That's okay, but we need to be doing more to make that quicker. And so I think there's infrastructure providers have a significant role to play in helping with that.
Yeah. So in some competitive spaces, losing is not an option. You have to do anything you can to win. A nuclear arms race is a good example of that. You don't want to lose that. It's an existential issue. In other spaces, you have to pay careful attention to the ethics and ethos of your space. Our space is obviously one of those spaces. Our space can be divided into situations in which you really must focus on rigorous maximal decentralization from the start, because and even then you can't get there from the start. It's very hard to build something that's profoundly, rigorously decentralized. But you need the mind share, you need to bring the talent that believes in that mission, and you need to do everything you can to achieve that mission. So the Ethereum technology is an excellent example of that. It, in my opinion, will be very hard for certain protocols that made certain trade-offs for performance to let technology fix the problems. I think our use cases and users, et cetera, are going to grow probably faster than the hardware technology improves. That said, these technologies can be excellent in certain contexts. I said at the start that I anticipate a heterogeneous, highly modular, modules, submodules, all really richly interconnected. So I think we're all doing valuable things. Even in the Ethereum ecosystem, the foundation must be maximally decentralized, and we've got to continually drive and be vigilant around that. But at higher layers, it's important to be seen as decentralized, but we took the decision at Consensys to focus on performance for Infura, for serving responses to requests, and we took the highest priority as being security for MetaMask. And so we've evolved those all along, verbally committing to progressive decentralization, which we've achieved partially already and are going to achieve in spades soon. And progressive decentralization involves permissionless innovation. So In the MetaMask context, we have the Snaps platform, which went live a few days ago, and in terms of different kinds of functionality, whether it's transaction inspection or security or messaging infrastructure, messaging to users, or users just chatting amongst one another, or adding connectivity to Bitcoin, Solana, Tezos, Doge, Starknet, etc. That is all available now for anybody to build without us being gatekeepers. So permissionless innovation in the MetaMask context leads to maximal decentralization for the MetaMask platform. We're doing the same thing for Infura. Decentralized infrastructure network is getting built. Based on what we built with Infura, we achieved product market fit, performance. It must stay performant or people won't use it. But now we've brought in some high-powered partners to create a federated version of Infura, which will ultimately end up being a decentralized version of the network.
Matthew, and then Pascal.
Yeah, I agree with everything Joe said, and I like how he talks about progressive decentralization. I think it's everybody looks at the space and says it's like a picture, but it's a movie, and this stuff will evolve over time. And I think the network topology, when you have nodes and data and all these really, really important things that are essentially the oxygen and creating decentralization, these piece parts are really important. And the other kind of knock that our industry gets is that a lot of our nodes and infrastructure is sitting in a closet, whether it's Google or AWS or elsewhere. But then I also think about what if I squint my eyes and I think about what does Google look like in the future sometimes, there's these provisioning agents that wind up finding compute and storage and data in the most decentralized way possible. So it'll be less about having boxes with blinky lights in warehouses. It'll be more about these provisioning agents and how do you get all these elements to create full decentralization, not only on a node, but the whole node stack as well. And so I think that's a big opportunity for builders and kind of folks that are thinking about how do you make this more decentralized. Those provisioning agents are going to be very, very important.
Tristan, can you remind me your question?
Yeah, of course. Basically, as you build infrastructure in crypto, how do you think about the trade-off between centralization and decentralization?
Yeah. So for us, the question is, if not decentralized, why? I don't think these technologies exist to be centralized again. I mean, you can always sacrifice everything to convenience, but if there's no need for another centralized assets, like, these already exist. You have a bank, you have fiat, etc. And so the beauty of this ability to own a digital asset is really the invention. And so this applies to many things. So again, if not decentralized, why? Behind decentralization, there's always also the second idea of privacy. So if you build decentralized systems, you have to wonder about privacy as well. And and this is where it becomes very difficult, because if you want decentralized and extremely private, then it becomes extremely technical. And sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of privacy if you want to have decentralization that is very easy to use. So that's one thing for sure. And so when you build a company, I think you need to put it in your mission in a way. So either you're trying to build on a decentralized system and for decentralization, or you're trying to build something that is centralized. But I think it's hard to try and do the two at the same time, because even philosophically, it's not, you're not trying to achieve the same. I think what we're seeing in the industry is this paradigm between like easy tech and hard tech. Easy tech always wins at the beginning in an industry, which is why today you probably see that I would argue that probably most assets are centralized on exchanges, for example, that are sort of central value propositions. And because decentralization is really hard tech, to make something that is decentralized as easy to use as something that has been centralized and designed for convenience is very, very difficult. But hopefully, hard tech wins in the end. It was not always the case. I mean, the web was very decentralized at the beginning, sort of probably less today. And you have big nodes on the web, Google and big companies like this that that capture most of the usage. If cryptocurrencies and sort of blockchain technologies go this way, and you end up with very easy to use, very convenient, centralized entities, I think crypto fails. And so if not decentralized, why? And so we're working hard. Other companies are working hard in terms of providing tools, infrastructure, and products to be able to have a real decentralized life, but also usability. Because I think it shouldn't be a philosophical issue. It should be a pure product issue. What does decentralization bring to you once you have your private keys? What can you do that is better that you cannot do with your bank or with a centralized entity? And I think there are use cases that you can see today that are, in my opinion, super interesting and that are sort of real-life usage. At Ledger, we are and so I finish with this just by giving an example, and so to illustrate what I mean. I think digital art and art associated to an NFT is one of the real killer apps that we can see right now. The way I got convinced is just to visit an art gallery, an NFT art gallery. Actually, I visited a bunch now. But when you visit an NFT art gallery, you can really see why. Why decentralization matter, why crypto matter, and why it's better than what we had before. And so therefore, if you have that use case, then decentralization wins. And so then it becomes a question of how can you purchase the art, how can you scan it, how can you bring it to you, etc. But if you bought digital art in the years 2000 and you see digital art today enhanced by blockchain technology and NFT, you can see that you can see the future. You have a view for the future, and then you understand decentralization. You understand the product. You understand why. So that would be my answer.
Okay, gentlemen, a round of prickly pears. Matthew, I've heard of you. I've seen you in the space for quite some time. I have not heard very much about the Bloq. Is that by design, or is that something you guys are working on?
Yeah, I mean, we're always working on a variety of different projects. We started out doing a lot of infrastructure, so building Fidelity's first Bitcoin wallet, staking with Visa, so a lot of hard infrastructure stuff, nodes, et cetera, and then expressed other things further in DeFi with a yield product called Vesper, a synthetics product called Metronome, and we have a great team of developers that in this space, the best developers don't want to go work for another company. They want to build their own kind of kingdoms. And so we've created these conditions where we're able to spin out other companies as well. Last year, we spun out a gaming studio called Atmos, which is doing comics and NFTs and games, so kind of like a Marvel 2.0. So we really are pretty innovative. And then we also look at some really hard tech. And I think over the next couple months, you'll hear more about kind of a magnum opus that we're working on. It's a new blockchain. So
I've heard lots about the Bloq over the years.
There you hear it from Joe himself. Okay, Joe, you next. Sure. So MetaMask has remained relatively static for quite a long time. It's by far the most used wallet in crypto, without a doubt.
Yep.
Do you think in the current state that it is ready to usher in the next generation of cryptocurrency users? And are there things that you think you would like to add to it to get it to that place?
What a great prompt that is. Thank you. So it hasn't actually remained incredibly static. We've done a lot of user interface tweaks and overhauls over the years. We have been laboring behind the scenes, which you referred to, on building a sort of sandbox security infrastructure based on something technical called object capabilities architecture that enables us to turn it into a platform, essentially enables us to open it up to the world of developers. They can build different kinds of functional features that can be loaded at runtime into MetaMask. And so 34 of these are now available in a few different categories. We've got other categories coming online, different functionalities like identity. And There's a revolution blossoming in the MetaMask space, and so it's all about permissionless innovation leading to decentralization. And MetaMask is no longer really under our control. We provide the platform, but it is now offered to the world to build on.
James, when you look at the at least original OG crypto vision or ethos, in many senses, Google is the antithesis of that. And if cryptocurrencies or Web3 as a technology grow enormously, they may erode at Google's supremacy of the internet. Is that a concern? Is that something that you guys think about when you help further Web3?
No, from my perspective, within Google Cloud, we're about serving our customers, and our customers are asking us to help them on this journey. So we're going to go where our customers want us to be, right? And so that's an important position, that we don't think these things are mutually exclusive. As I was saying in response to sort of some of Joe's points, I think we'll live in a continuum of Web 2 or traditional internet as we know it today, through to a more decentralized world where these things can coexist. And I would say that when we talk to our customers, most of them do not have a particular political agenda around the philosophy of complete decentralization. That matters, but it's not the be-all and end-all to a range of enterprise organizations. And whilst that's critical to this space continuing to grow, it's a core tenet to it. I think that from various vantage points, that can matter to different degrees. And so making sure that we respect all those views and try and provide a set of capabilities that can meet in the middle, I feel that we're offering a really important service. And I think we're going to continue to see this evolve. So no, it doesn't concern me.
Pascal, as a longtime Ledger user, recently you guys had to deal with a lot of social pressure, I guess, that occurred after this announcement of the new firmware update that allowed for what people speculated as a sort of backdoor into Ledger. I know you guys restated, but I would love to hear from you sort of what happened, what the vision was for that product, and where that stands now.
So I don't know if you guys noticed, but Tristan always makes me go last every question. And now he asked me the toughest question of all.
Hey, it's because we're both called Pascal, so
voilà.
Can't go easy on him.
Exactly. His second name, his middle name is Pascal. Voilà. That's why he's so tough on me. Look, the world of crypto is a world that is super emotional. To give you an analogy, when there is football or soccer World Cup in France, we are 67 million to think that suddenly we are the French soccer coach or French football coach. And we analyze every decision that the coach makes, and of course we disagree, and we would have made something different. So this is sort of what happens on Twitter. And Twitter is not exactly real life. So it always looks sort of more than what it really is. But on Twitter, Ledger always tries to innovate, and it's true that if you do nothing, if you don't bring new product, new services to market, if you do nothing, nobody criticizes you, but yet you do nothing. If you try to do something, and it happens to sort of all of us on stage, I know that MetaMask is often also under fire and pressure. Every time they change a word somewhere, etc., people freak out. Because you try to do things, so you impact people's life. And I think it's a testimony to how technologies and products like so Ledger, MetaMask, etc., are important to people. And people worry a lot because it is their money, it is their lifestyle, etc. And so we understand that, and we feel sort of humbled by that, and also responsible. But also, we are security experts. And so far, people trusted Ledger because we are security experts. And so far, Ledger has never lost a cent, never mismanaged money, and the security that we put around our users is the best in the space. And so our philosophy is to never compromise on security, in the sense that we rather be slow than to move fast and break things. Move fast and break things is Silicon Valley motto that applied very nicely to Web2. It's not very good when it comes to crypto, because you don't want to break things. Not all companies think like us, by the way. A lot of companies move fast, break things, and we've seen what happened in 22. It's a fact of life. This is how you can decide to run your business the way you want. Move fast, break things, sure, but not in crypto and not in security. So when at Ledger we think about security, we think about zero compromise on security, and whatever product we release today, in the future, in 10 years, etc., the compromise on security is zero, because this is a reputation that is in line, and this is the trust that you can have into the product. I think when we release a new product, and what we misjudged on this one, actually it's not that we misjudged it, it's that we talked a lot about Ledger Recover before, in the press, etc. I mean, you can Google, you can go online. You'll see that we referred to that product a lot and to what the product was going to do. I presented it in conferences like this, like I'm speaking to you now. We never had like a negative feedback. We never had anyone complain. We never even had like anyone raising the sort of points that were raised in Twitter. So quite frankly, I was disappointed. I was just like, fuck, I wish I had like sort of more feedback. And also, we thought that people wouldn't care as much. But what happened and what triggered emotion is we released operating system notes before we could release the product and talk about the product and explain what it was doing. And so people feel sort of trapped into a system and feel like sort of con, etc. And so it was miscommunication. That was the mistake that we've done. It was a mistake, and it's something that we'll try not to do again. But fundamentally, it doesn't change what Ledger is. It doesn't change how we build product. And this product is perfectly secure. I'm not going to go in the details of this here because security is a very complex matter. We've actually published so many things between that PR crisis and now in terms of how the product is designed, architecture, etc. We are actually going to release the product soon. We've open sourced it because one of the good feedback from the community was, how do we know that there is no backdoor? How do we know what you're doing, etc.? Well, to a certain extent, you always have to trust that, I'm not a backdoor guy, but we've designed the technology and we design everything so it can't be backdoored. But also to open source, and we have communicated on the open source roadmap of Ledger to make more of what we do open source, allows for the community to verify. And I think it was one of the big asks, and this is what we did. Since we've been releasing new notes and since we've been talking about the products more and more, honestly, I think the feedback that we got, also from people that were very emotional at the time, is that now they understand and now it's okay, etc. And a lot of feedback that I'm getting, and why we designed the product, is because we were being asked a lot to deliver a product like this. You have to understand that we're talking about scalability, infrastructure, and decentralization. So in the different things that I say, if not decentralized, then why? If not secure and easy to use, it's not going to work. And so in terms of ease of use, if we all collectively think that this will scale, if you keep your 24 words or 12 words on a piece of paper, okay, that's wrong. Like, this will never scale. The way that we use crypto today is the same way that people were using the internet in '95. You needed to be an engineer. You needed to know how to code your computer. Like, it was very difficult. Who was using the internet in '95? Okay, so not many people in the room. So for those that were not in internet in '95, it was fucking hard to use. Right now, you got your iPhone, and it feels like magic almost. But in '95, it was not the case. It was so hard to use. And I'm turning to people that are more technical. Someone like Joe is like, what is he talking about? Like, if you're good with your computer, of course you can make it work. But for regular people and mass adoption, it's very hard to use. And so if we think that the next billion users is gonna come and use this in a decentralized way and keep the 24 words somewhere, that's not possible. So you need to find solution to solve for that pain point. It's not just us working on this. There are many other companies that are trying to do it in a different way, etc. But the 24-word problem or the entropy problem is the real problem for scalability of the industry, and we're trying to solve it one way. Again, I will restate that it is optional. Nothing can happen on your device if you don't trigger it, in the sense that the technology is designed so only you can control something. So there is no backdoor that we can put in the device. There is no central control of Ledger on the 6.5 million devices that we saw on the planet. This is part of how we build security. You cannot hack Ledger. To hack Ledger and the entirety of the hardware wallet that we've sold, you would have to, I don't know what you have to do, but first you would have to collect the 6.5 million devices with the 6.5 million people and fucking torture them so they can give you their PIN code. That's what you have to do. So it's not possible. And just on the torture stuff, this never happens. You are walking every day in the street with credit cards with a PIN number. How many times have you been attacked and tortured to give up your PIN number? Those attacks are very unlikely. So when we think about security, when we think about crypto, there is a lot of emotion, and so that's okay. And when you come to rationalize everything, I think that the best thing to do is to try it out. It's coming out in a few weeks. And when it will be out, I think that whatever tension is left will disappear. And what we say, because we stand for freedom, is if you don't like it, don't use it. And if you think that it's a risk for you, you don't also have to use Ledger. I mean, I think we think always customer first, and customer first all the way to, if you don't think it's right for you, we understand. And we appreciated your business, and also we're sad to see you leave. But usually when you do that, often you come back because we're going to make it so much better, so much easy to use, and we're going to help you be decentralized, secure, and connected. So hopefully you like the products that we design and you come back to us. Just after we launch Ledger Recover, we're going to launch Stacks. And the combination of Ledger Recover and Stacks, Ledger Stacks, is actually a way to really solve the onboarding problem into self-custody.
Yeah, I totally agree that 1224 seed phrases will not be the way that we bring on the next generation of users. Thank you for clarifying that. The final question with the time that we have remaining, so perhaps quickly, and we can start with you this time, Pascal, is what, in your opinion, is the hardest problem that remains unsolved in crypto right now?
Well, I think it's 24 words. We just talked about it, but if you think about it, this leads to inheritance. You're decentralized, you own your keys. How do you pass it on in an easy way to, for me, to my son, for example, or to my family? There are still many things to fix in terms of governance, because security is not just security of the private key, it's also the security of the governance. If you're drunk past 2 a.m. in the morning, should you have access to all of your funds and make transactions? Can you put a governance rule on top of your own coin so you make it a bit more difficult for you at that time? I mean, it's a bit of a stretch example, but you see what I mean in terms of governance. So there are basic features that are not completely solved, and also that don't exist for Web2. I mean, typically I try to close my Facebook account recently. It's very hard. They make it very, very hard. And everything that I posted on Facebook is sort of theirs. And for me to retrieve it, they make it such a cumbersome process. So there are things like this where I think Web3 or crypto or decentralization is bringing tools and technology that will allow for people to really own what is theirs and to make it easy to transfer to their next of kin.
Thank you, James.
3 quick thoughts. I think we need much higher TPS from a technical standpoint, but I think the question in itself is one from a technical standpoint. I think we actually need real-world business problems that have a double spend problem, that need a trustless and permissionless network, and user experience.
Thank you, Joe.
So the next major unlock in the decentralized protocol space is identity, attestations, and reputation. The hardest problem facing crypto going forward is how the complementary nature of decentralized protocols will enable us as a species to shape artificial intelligence. It's a necessary complement.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that sometime. Matthew?
Yeah, I love the identity piece. And Pascal, on the ledger piece, I think it's good to have choices on how humans interact with this stuff. And we're always trying to get the perfect system, but we got to get better systems. Because back in the early days of crypto, it was like managing a wallet was like filleting your own blowfish. It was like really, really hard sometimes. But my answer is probably regulation. I think we're going through a pretty seismic shift right now with what happened with FTX And this is like happens in every industry. This is industrial organization where you have innovation, thank you Satoshi, entrepreneurship, capital formation, all this stuff until you have a FTX moment and regulators come in. Right now it's a little uninspired in terms of the regulation by enforcement and not really having a clear perspective. But if you look at anything else like pharma, oil and gas, railroads, et cetera, you have an event, and then after the event, you have some clarity. And I think in the next, year or two, worst case, we'll have some clarity out the other end, and that'll help with capital formation and kind of get a lot of the regulatory arbitrage friction of people flying to other jurisdictions to build and take a lot of that out of the way so we could really get back to work.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be a moderator to these titans of industry. Thank you all to the listeners. Have a good rest of your day.